The big brands in their last 10 years haven't written social purpose into their reason to believe. I'd be surprised. I think all the top 20 brands will have it in there because you know what, they have to.
Hey there, James here, and you're listening to the Own the Moment podcast, the show where we explore the complex and always evolving landscape of marketing, advertising, and branding, and try to get to the bottom of what it means to be a truly memorable brand. The Own the Moment podcast is brought to you by Como Technologies, a self-service, complete customer engagement platform that helps you cut through the noise to truly connect with your customers and retain and grow those connections over time. With Como, you can build and deploy new campaigns, activations, promotions, and programs in days, not months, and our software is used by some of the world's biggest consumer brands, from Heineken to Budget, Goodman Fielder, Foxtel, JLL, Williams Racing, and McDonald's. Learn more at como.tech. This week, we're talking to Richard Copping, a creative director based out of London with 20 years of experience working at some of the most prestigious agencies in advertising, from Weber Shandwick to Ogilvy and Saatchi Saatchi, for brands like Unilever, Toyota, Ford, and Greenpeace. Richard recently won a stack of awards for his team's work with Unilever and their Unmute campaign, which launched during the lockdowns and focused on lifting the stigma surrounding domestic violence. You might say we live in a precarious time for brands. 2/3 of consumers say they want brands to take an active stance on social issues, whilst the backlash against brands who do seem to be getting louder as our world becomes increasingly polarised. Given his experience working with large consumer brands, Rich was the perfect guest to have on to explore this tension. Rich and I had a fascinating discussion around how brands should approach social change, how to deal with the inevitable backlash, and what it means for a brand to be authentic in 2023. Let's get to the show. Rich Copping, welcome to the On the Moment podcast.
Thanks for having me, James.
So Richard, I wanted you on to talk about social impact campaigns. You're someone with a lot of experience in this space. In fact, just last year, you won a ton of awards for Unmute, a campaign for Unilever focused on lifting the stigma around domestic violence against women, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But I want to start by just saying, we're clearly in politically strange times, I guess to put it mildly, when it comes to polarization, division. How can brands actively take stances on social issues without alienating customers in, these increasingly polarized times? What do you make of this?
It's a good question because it comes down to you as a brand.
So what do you say, Rich, to someone, what would you say to someone that says, these are just their stunts, their ways to generate awareness. It's the most talked about brand on the internet this week. Yeah. Someone that says that, what would you say?
Again, I don't like to sit on the fence. And I go back to what I said earlier, which is, if you don't start something, if you don't start a conversation, and you can start a conversation in many different ways. Like I said, it's either fire or bloom, right? These days is you need to start somewhere. And I think as a socially conscious brand, if you're socially conscious as a brand, I can't think of, the top 10 brands up there, from Toyota to Apple to GE, the big brands that in their last 10 years haven't written social purpose into their reason to believe. I'd be surprised. I think all the top 20 brands will have it in there because you know what, they have to. And because of the Gen Zs and the millennials' power, their power is unimaginable. What power people have now in terms of a voice, and whether that's social or whether it's this thing that's glued to our hands now. Me too. I'm in my 50s. I can't put this damn thing down. Right. Is awareness a good thing? I think so. I've worked in the advertising business for 20 years, and doing paid advertising, forcing our opinion on you, and what we believe and what's good soup and what's bad soup, And I think awareness is great for any social issue, literally for any issue, if you can stand by it. If you can't live up to it, and Pepsi, I've just clicked into my head. Is it Kendall Jenner? Is it? I got that wrong. No.
I think so. Yeah. Remind me. That rings a bell, but I can't.
Kendall Jenner. 4 or 5 years ago, they did during the Black Lives. Again, a hot topic, as you might call it, like a social crisis. And not. It was brutal what happened in that period.
Of course.
Is Pepsi came out with I can't remember the name of the ad was, but it was Kendall Jenner. I've got that wrong. I know I have. But it was one of the Jenner girls walking through a crowd, protest, policeman, and she gives. Long story short, she gives a can of Pepsi to a policeman, and whoa! And the best Twitter comment I thought was that there was no black people in the room. I was like, oh my God. And I saw it. It's not whether I thought it was horrible or disgusting. I just thought, you know what? You're tone deaf.
Right.
And, I think, sorry, I'm going to round around to your question, but, you can count things on your hand that you should be aware of when you open your mouth. If you've got, if you're socially aware, if you're human, if you're authentic, which is, the word you used earlier, you would ask yourself, is this the right thing to say? Is this the right thing to do? Is this going to attract attention that we don't want? Or, will this eventually find a way round to what we do want? It's a treacherous line in terms of marketers and agencies and PR companies of being, that moment is critical that you get it right. And
right.
Do people get it wrong? Of course they do. Pepsi got it wrong. Have Pepsi suffered? No, not at all. They're still massive. They're massive. They're definitely in the top 20 in the world. They're not there with Coca-Cola, but they're top 20 in the world.
Sure. It's interesting. I had a conversation with, do you know Tom Goodwin? There's an English sort of thinker and commentator and author,
nice.
All things marketing.
Yeah.
And he said he made that point, which is that, I think he was talking about, a brand like H&M, which is, of course, it's very, and he was talking about the risks of, I guess, leaning too heavily into social purpose when you can't actually back it up with action.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
H&M, talking about sustainability, and look, and, Tom said at the time, he's confident that they're doing everything they can, but, when they are sort of purveyors of fast fashion, and I'm sure some of the conditions in which their garments are made are not optimal. And his advice was be careful and sort of, and I wonder what you make of that. I mean, again, how can a brand, in a world where perfection is what is demanded of every brand, how can a brand be wobbly and trying their best?
Perfection is a scary thing. It's definitely in me as a human being on a personal level, and it's been detrimental to me as a person. Growing up, with 2 daughters and my wife, is perfection turns into control, and losing control is not a great thing, but letting go a little bit is good, right? So I think perfection is good and bad. I think learning to accept imperfect is better than embracing perfection. And the reason I say that is you tend to learn more, you tend to listen more, you tend to grab at more things that are less careful and more risky, but risky in a good way. So I think purpose is evolution, right? So, and nothing in evolution is perfect. It just evolves, and the more that you attach to that purpose that makes it evolve the way that you think people will like being a good person, or being or be socially aware person, or being someone that's set on to be a great fighter, to be a great singer, to be a great artist. Is you attach things to yourself to make your purpose more acceptable. Right. So I think embracing perfection, and I'm sure a lot of people I've worked with would just say, God, that's just nuts. But that's it. embrace what could go wrong rather than embracing everything that's going to go right, because the cliff is just it's a lot sharper, right? I prefer to fall onto a ledge and grab onto a branch and fall onto another ledge and then fall into a pillar of clouds into the water than I would to just straight into a bed of rocks, right?
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think that there's a really clear takeaway, I think, from I guess, this whole discussion so far around purpose, which is this, to sort of the fear of the mob or fear of the backlash. Yeah. I think it's, we've named, various examples already where, look, it's not to say it can't happen, but, taking a stance, at least, it seems far less risky than one might, perceive. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about Unmute, which was a campaign was launched in, I think, 2022. Yeah. Won a stack of awards. 5 years ago, but yeah. It was during lockdown, which was weird. Yeah, won a stack of awards. I know it was ranked, in the top 10 best global PR campaigns for the year. And I saw plenty of photos on LinkedIn of trophies and plaques. So tell me, what was the genesis of that campaign? Where did it come from, and what did you do?
Yeah, all is not what it seems. Strangely enough, for that campaign. I worked with Unilever on and off for 10, 15 years. And there's lots of debate about Unilever, one of the biggest, along with P&G, the biggest spenders, marketers in the world. And why would, I always ask these questions when you get these briefs, and a brief comes across your desk and it says, it was a pitch actually, very fast pitch, 3-day turnaround, get it out the door. But I'm always drawn, I think it's me and a lot of good people that work in the communication world, that, you want to do something good. You want to, attach yourself to a problem that I think is not ever solvable. It's just, I do believe that it's just making people consciously aware that the people are out there that are suffering. So that was the brief, basically. And there were lots of numbers on the brief. During lockdown, this happens, and, domestic abuse, this, that, and I think in a nutshell, the brief was, how can Unilever play a part in helping, their staff, it's internal brief, not external, to attend a session about being aware, sorry, I'm going to stop using that word, being aware of people that might be sat next to you at work that might be suffering at home, okay? And it wasn't aimed at women or men, it was aimed at people. And so they have, I think, don't quote me on this, but around 180,000 staff worldwide.
Wow.
Bottom to top. So you've got people who work on the floor, in product production, in packing, right up to, the Alan Joves of the world, the CEOs, and I should know the new person who's taken over. But so in that spectrum, go back to what we said earlier, there will be, luxe brands, there'll be beauty brands. So my question was where does this fit in the sphere of what you do? And that's when she said, well, because we're people. I won't mention the lady, but she was absolutely wonderful. She said, well, we're people, and it's lockdown. And my gut is there was a sense from the brand that they, that the pandemic was causing problems for people, either within, whether they had something like information within the sphere of all the staff worldwide, that there's a sense of pain, loneliness, maybe being locked in like we all felt, and then right to the top, which is people who have been hurt. Right. So Unmute came as an idea, came very simply, like us talking is exactly that, it just fell out of the strategy of great planner working on the business. And there it was in black and white on the paper, is that people who suffer domestic violence almost don't have a voice. So we attached the word and the line and the violence of domestic, a good lovely little advertising, whatever you want to call it, tagline. But this wasn't advertising, which was nice about it. It was really a social impact campaign, and the challenge all the way through was to make it more than a little red logo over a mouth. And, when you work, when you create those things as a creative, people fall in love with that image. Oh, wow, but then you got to go beyond that and go, what does that little red unmute microphone mean beyond that to people? So it was mainly socially based. And we didn't have a lot of money. They don't spend, Unilever don't spend a lot of money on this. They spend a lot of effort implementing it, which I think is better. And we worked with their social teams internally to get it out there. It was done during lockdown, which I talk about, reasons to believe is the timing was right.
Right.
And the groundswell on it in a very short period, if you talk about measurement or how it works, was massive, I would say. For a very small, this wasn't about money. It was done on a shoestring budget. They didn't want everything we did, but we did it. And the team working, we thought, let's just push this. And every time we said to them, let's do that. And they were like, oh my God, you got people? How do you shoot people? Lockdown. We did it all online. We got people off the street. And produced out of Perth, your hometown. So we got people off the street, and got there in studios. Everyone wearing masks, took their masks off. So it was, and what happened even to the people in the film also resonated with it. So if you pick those 13, 14 people we filmed, you have to explain to them what the idea is. What was interesting is every single person that was in that studio, and I'm talking micro here, resonated with this thought that, oh my God, imagine being locked at home in that horror. Where there's the world saying to stay at home, and it's the worst place on the planet. And to marry that with, so there's our purpose. Unilever's purpose is definitely social conscious, social change. They're definitely about sustainability. There's lots of reasons. To do this, for Unilever to do it. Number one, because they have the size. Number one, they have the staff. So go back to what the purpose was in terms of an action, was to get the staff in their company worldwide to attend these sessions. So it's like training, and it's in part of their training. The best thing that happened in this is a global brand, massive Unilever brand, and Joe, who was the CEO at the time, released their policy for domestic violence. And I read the whole thing. It's quite long. And what comes out of it is is a sense of learning, a sense of understanding that, translated into a campaign called Unmute, which, if it affected one or two people within Unilever, to me, that's the best measurement. It changed. Someone felt that they could say to someone, because you can't even imagine what it's like. I mean, I can't. I've never been in that situation. I've never known someone in that situation that you can't escape. So yeah, it was a powerful project to work on. It's still being measured. They're still doing it, which is good. It's 2 years on. Wow. They've involved, I think the collaborations, beauty of being a monster brand is that you can, bring in the Me Too movement, which I think was brilliant. I can only go by, was it successful? I think so. It's a success stop. Hopefully not. I hope it continues. And there were lots of other campaigns in that period. I don't know if you saw some of them, but it was during the European football, tournament where, most domestic violence happens after a game of football.
Right, I do remember that. Now there's this image, and I can't quite remember it, but was it the lady with the the cross in blood? I mean, just horrific, but so powerful.
Yeah.
I mean,
and what I liked about that work is what I've always liked about work. It's quite about work that basically the problem is a very negative problem, is to attack it with a negative. And I like that. I still think it's good. What we wanted to do was take it to, sometimes you forget that actually the person, you forget the group of people that are suffering. And they did another campaign, which he's coming home. So, like playing on, it's coming home, it's coming home. And I live in the UK, so he's coming home. And I thought, well, why can't Unmute be about the people that we're trying to help. And sometimes you just focus on the problem, you know, the person that's creating, or the group, or the thing that's creating the problem. Mute was, we changed it a bit difficult. That's why it was quite hard to get across, is that why can't we talk about the victims and how they can get out, or how they can get help. Sorry, get out, it sounds stupid. Can get help, or, you know, at least reach out. So, you know, this, you know, everything in it was, rather than, you know, showing that these people were suffering, it was that there was a sense of hope in Unmute. And, you know, and I think, yes, it did play on that, you know, the vernacular that you're on mute. Unmute was just nice. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to build anything philosophical into it, but it was nice. It seemed to fit, and it seemed to resonate. And back to what we were talking about earlier, timing is crucial for action. You know, if you leave it too late, people, we're you know, we don't drink the same wine every day. We don't, you know, eat the same food every day. We like change, and I think being, I can't remember the word, but or I can't think of the word, but being, you know, there when something happens, and for good. I think for any brand that's going to step into the social impact campaign, should have their finger on trends, culture, you know, moments, because some of the best communication history is because the timing was fantastic, you know.
I guess, you know, taking a little bit of a lighter turn, I'd love to ask you a couple of quick fire questions to finish.
I'm no good at quick fire. Here we go.
So, as the first things that pop into your mind. Your favorite campaign of all time? You don't have to have been involved. I guess your
No, I haven't. I wish I'd done a favourite of all time. There's so much work I love. Wow, where would I go? I love a camp. You know what? If it was a pure advertising paid, I'm going to lean into Bud. It would be the What's Up campaign from DDB Chicago back in the early 2000s. Brilliant, you know, talking about purpose and culture. Bang on then. It's still in popular culture today. I still see it on.
Remind me, I can't. I'm not placing that in my mind.
It was all about these group of. There's a long story to it, but DDB Chicago created this campaign for Buzzer called What's Up, and if you just tap in WA 3 S's and UP, so What's Up. In terms of what's up, exclamation mark, they coined that phrase, what's up, that every time someone got a pizza delivered, there'd be a guy lying on a couch and go, what's up? And that, it was nothing to do with the beer, it was to do with pizza, it was to do with culture. And so what's up was a greeting. It was, you know, and it became this, I think it was a short film before it became a piece of advertising. They did this whole series, just tap them in. They're still good today. They're still on Instagram. They're still on TikTok. People still say it, you know, 20 years on. You know, a paid for, you know, TV campaign. DDB Chicago, absolutely still good.
Yeah, I'm going to go and watch that right away. Yeah. I've got vague memories of a song. So maybe it seeped into other.
You'll love it. Yeah. So that's Bud. What's Up? As in What's Up, DDB Chicago. And I mean, I love some work from Apple, you know, the creativity goes on, beautiful campaign during that dark period of the pandemic. And, you know, and I think Dumb Ways to Die out of your beautiful country, Australia was genius because of, I think it was one of those campaigns that just, it was beginning to end clever, entertaining, you know, and seeped into all forms of life. Forget railway tracks. It became, you know, memes. It became just phenomenal, you know, tentacles that campaign had. Like, ridiculous. I can't stand the people who made it. Like, what? Jeez. Yeah, absolute genius. So sorry, that wasn't one. There was a few.
No, that's great. And as I'm doing these sessions, Apple comes up time and time again. So I think it's worthy of a deep dive at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think is the best brand, the highest performing brand in the world right now? And maybe right now, maybe not sort of all time, because I guess naturally
I wouldn't be able to answer that. Yeah,
our minds go to Apples and Nikes,
Yeah.
but maybe
a lot
new
of work.
brand.
Yeah, I don't know. I look at a lot of work, and you're right. Like the stuff, the brands. There's certain brands that rise to the top every time just because of their weight. In terms of allowing agencies to stretch, to stretch the bar, right? To raise the bar, raise the bar. So, top of mind, the work that I quite enjoyed over the last few years has definitely come from a beer brand again called Heineken. I think their humour, they've always been on point in what they do, from stunts to how they talk, as a beer brand, I think is really interesting. They do pretty well at that Cannes award show. They seem to clean up there. I mean, Bud is up there, obviously, in terms of of what they do. But in terms of I think Patagonia would be. It's not a new brand, but I think it feels new, if that makes sense. Vega. Two very interesting brands that I think talk in an interesting way. And going back to the conversation right at the beginning, is purpose, and I think Brewdog is they've had their ups and downs, but I think the forest thing they did was genius. It was like, we got some things wrong and we're getting them right. And what I said earlier is that embrace imperfection, right? Imperfection, is he a bad guy? Is he a terrible guy? No, he's not. He's got some things wrong, or the brand's got some things wrong. But actually, the forest was like redemption overnight. Let's build some new. Let's grow some new forest, and do it. And you can visit it. It's sorry. So that one done.
That's a
lots there, not one. Sorry. If I was to pick one, I'd say I think Brewdog is most probably the most interesting at the moment.
Yeah, that's a fascinating one. Yeah. I think Patagonia, going back to our discussion around purpose, and I think that they are just almost maybe thinking on the run. They almost feel like the textbook sort of best in class example of leading with purpose and then fulfilling it. Right.
The CEO saying you can have it all. Right from the beginning.
There's something very powerful about that.
Yeah, they gave a damn. And, you talked right at the beginning about authenticity. Being authentic is authentic to the fibre, they're authentic,
Yeah. And I think it's interesting you said they feel like a new brand. I agree, and I wonder if it's because there has been look, I don't have the facts, but anecdotally, I see a lot more of their clothes now than I did 10 years ago. And I wonder if part of that is their... obviously fashion's part of it, but if it's part of that social, that is actually elevating them.
Totally. I totally agree with you. Even if you haven't done your research, I'm going to put money down on you're right, is that they haven't been quiet. They've been on people's backs, chests, feet for over 30 years. But they're a quiet brand. They're not a fashion brand, but as workwear, outdoor gear became more fashionable, therefore people's reasons and values started to rise to the top and people pick it up. Oh, do you know this is made of this? Do you know this is made of recycled? Suddenly, Patagonia are not normal.
That's really interesting because I think that speaks to some sort of long-term thinking, right? Which is, they built 30 years of brand reputation, which when the fashion winds started blowing in their direction, they could capitalize on that.
And whether they meant to or not, I'm going to say they didn't. I'm going to say it,
right.
And Black Friday cemented them, right? Don't buy this jacket, just cemented them. And then everyone followed them, opt out, raise, big brand, opt out. Who created that Black Friday ad? Patagonia.
Right, that's a fantastic example. Yeah, it's genius. So what about another question? What's the most overrated or overused trend or tactic in marketing and advertising right now?
James, toughie, man. There's so many things I want to say, but I won't. But I'll say things like metaverse. As a creative person working in a royalty PR agency called Weber, metaverse gets thrown, and data. But I suppose it's not a marketing term. I think the one thing that bugs me is this word efficiencies, and it's personal a little bit, is that, you know, efficiencies, maybe it's not a marketing term, it's more of a you know, I think maybe it's a marketing term, is I think efficiencies, you know, is affecting, you know, our creativity. I do. I think by cutting back, you know, and that's what, let's be more efficient, is, you know, yeah, everyone wants to be more efficient, but if it means cutting back on thinking and creativity, which I feel there's a bit of a groundswell for the last, you know, 8 to 10 years, I hate that word, because I know what it means. It means that let's cut back. And why are you cutting back? I know times are hard, but don't cut back on the things that change us, right?
Yeah, so I'm having a gentleman on the show in a week or so called Orlando Wood. He's the chief innovation officer at a company called System One, and they help do TV advertising testing for brands. So you can put your ads into their software, and it will test emotional response. And he's written a book called Lemon.
Ooh,
and
love the name already.
Yeah, and why it's so interesting, Rich, is that his whole thesis is that, you know, the last 10, 15 years, we've seen this massive decline in creativity in advertising. And he, you know, his idea is that, you know, left brain thinking has taken over advertising. It's efficiency, it's you know, logic, analytics. You know, Derek Thompson in The Atlantic, he had this beautiful article a few years ago called the Moneyballification of everything, and I just it's such a beautiful turn of phrase.
Oh God, I love that.
And I recommend you go read the book Lemon, because, you know, Orlando's big. You know, what we need is to return to that right brain.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Creative. And I think you're totally right that I think we are absolutely. I mean, the more and more of these discussions I have, I think I think we've hit peak.
I think so, because
efficiency.
it hurts when you hear it. I think where I work is great. I mean, PR is not known massively for creativity, but it seems to be that something that the PR world is embracing, and you know, especially towards earned. Which is the hardest form of media, is exactly what we're talking about today, is how do you get eyeballs on you, know, without paying for the eyeballs, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think, you know, we talk a lot internally that, you know, we talk about this idea of own the moment. I mean, that's literally the name of this show, which is that, you know, to stand out and cut through is just getting harder and harder, you know, privacy and death of the third-party cookie and AI-driven, you know, garbage content, and I mean, it's just going to get harder. And I think, you know, returning to that, I guess, the craft of cut through. That we think that's where the next renaissance is coming, which I think is exciting.
And then it doesn't become about age; it becomes about ideas. And you know, efficiency to me is about, you know, you're right. It's the Moneyball. Lovely, brilliant. I'll read Lemon for sure. Yeah.
Second last question here. So, you know, conversely, what's the tactic that no one is talking about that we should be talking about? I guess another way to put it is, what's an underrated and sort of underused tactical tool?
I don't know if anyone's not talking about it, but something I always want to do, but it's very hard, which I think people are doing, but maybe it's not talk, is about personalized content. And I mean, like, you know, hyper personalized content. And I think because that, you know, to make people feel and believe something that they may not have, or to feel better about what they do, say, and will become, is not what I've done over the years. I've worked in, you know, broadsheet, you know, to the masses, you know, and I think, you know, people might say that's why we use influencers and celebrities, but again, you know, that has to be done in a very touchy-feely way. But I think I think being able to do very targeted content to your audience, and something we haven't talked about on this, but, you know, when you were talking about the social, is, you know, there's one thing, know who you're talking to. It's like, you know, when you contacted me, I had to know who I'm talking to. I needed to know, and I think you're stupid if you don't know who you're talking to. It's the first thing you should ask. It's, who am I talking to? It's like going into a bank and just talking to someone who sat on a couch. It's like, it's like, we all have labels for a reason. Hopefully it's because you can live up to what that label is. But, being able to target, and I think, I don't know who's doing it really well. I need to do more research into it or look more. But, very targeted content to people, to a person, to a group of people that resonates with them and their beliefs is something I think it is happening. I'm positive it's happening. I think it costs more. It's a lot more work. People want to talk to the world. Brands want to talk to the world. Obviously they do. But I think Vega, if I pick one brand, and I think Beauty Counter, I've got that wrong. Beauty Counter did that during lockdown. They did Beauty Counter very targeted to people who care about where they get their makeup from and what it means, rather than the big brand, the big, all singing, dancing brand. So I'd say that's an interesting space. I don't really know what to call it, but it is, it isn't the Vice of the world. It really is very targeted, in-depth, insightful content. I think be really interesting.
And we talk a lot about, because obviously I guess one of the biggest macro trends in like marketing tech or ad tech is obviously, Google will next year finally kill the third-party cookie. And, we're investing a lot in our platform, which is about helping brands implement first-party or even zero-party data strategies. And I actually think what's so exciting about that is that I think we can, for the first time, implement like true personalization. I think there's been this idea that we've had through targeting, we've had personalization, but I think you're right. I think we haven't. We've had, lookalike audiences and, group preferences, and at least in our very early experiments, we're seeing that, no, you can actually, if you can get a customer to tell you what they want and think and feel, and then you can truly deliver on that, which I think is, and
not research 12 people in the room. What do you think of this? That to me isn't targeted. It's set up. It's manufactured. It's for you to get a result. And what I'm thinking is, when it's parsed or hyper targeted, it's not to get a result. It's to get into what people feel and want. Is I'm not saying that's easy. I reckon it's tough.
Sure.
Because everyone wants the world. No one really wants one person sat in their house. But to me, that is the next space. Yeah, it is the space. Yeah.
Yep. Last question, Rich. Who, as I'm looking to build this platform and have interesting discussions, who should I have on next? Who do you recommend I
Wow. God, so many people. Person I really like, I've only met him once, but I think he's a really interesting dude. It's Paul Shearer. I don't know if you've talked to him already.
No.
He's the Chief Creative Officer of Global Clients at VML Y&R. Paul Shearer. When I was in Dubai for a bit, he and I know his work from back when he was in the UK, but he's one of those people that and I think we're both on the far side of the careers. Is he's always had his finger on the pulse and the work that comes out of the teams and him, and is. I always find it very insightful and broad spectrum brands. I think he's an interesting character, and also very nice dude.
It's great. Yeah. Rich, thanks so much for being on the show.
Take care, and it was lovely to be invited. Lovely to talk to you. Love to do it again sometime.
Thanks for listening to the Own the Moment podcast. If you liked this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss upcoming episodes. And to suggest a guest or provide feedback, please visit our dedicated podcast hub at ownthemomentpod.com.